And welcome to The Verdict. Kent Myers flying solo one more time without Mick Cornett. Mick should be back next week to join us. We are once again taping from Tulsa, and I took this opportunity at the suggestion of a very close professional friend of mine, Joel Wohlgemuth, who's one of the best lawyers in the state of Oklahoma, if not the Southwest, to become acquainted with one of his law partners that he works with on a daily basis, Ryan Ray. And I thought that it would be a good show to bring Ryan Ray to you this Sunday morning and hear about him, hear what he's doing here in Tulsa, what practice he's involved in, and just kind of get a sense of what's involved in being a young lawyer in Tulsa, getting started in the criminal defense work and in the civil side as well. So we're going to be visiting today with Ryan Ray. I hope you'll enjoy it. In the meantime, let's go to a break, and when we come back, we'll introduce you to Ryan, and we'll see what he's got on his mind. You're watching The Verdict.
What I can offer is insight into understanding the Native American art, how these artists are expressing themselves as cultural people. I am Heather Ottone. I'm a Native American researcher and curator, and I am Chickasaw. I can remember in first grade the teacher saying, "Well, you're so lucky you don't look Indian." That was difficult to hear because it was what I was. It's what I am. I think there's a renaissance going on amongst the tribes. I think the Chickasaws are leading that. We didn't die. We're not gone. So what are we now? And what can we do now to start to form that identity, to survive into another century, and to have the culture guiding us into that future? That would be significant.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
It's a North American energy revolution. We're the fastest growing source of new oil and natural gas supplies in the world.
The shift to North American energy will create approximately 3 million jobs.
All that money we've been sending overseas, $400 billion a year. Imagine that staying in our economy. It's a game changer.
Real energy independence starts now, and it starts with Oklahoma.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers sitting in without Mick Cornett this week, but he'll be back next week, and he does send his regards. We're really pleased today to welcome a young lawyer that I want all our viewers to get to know and to know about. A young man is off to a very, very fast start in the practice of law. His name is Ryan Ray. Ryan is with the law firm of Norman Wohlgemuth. That's Joel Wohlgemuth that I talked about earlier. He did his undergraduate work at Arkansas State University, did his law work at the University of Arkansas, where he graduated summa cum laude, was involved in the U.S. Marine Corps for a while. He has practiced law here in the state of Oklahoma since 2008. He does a combination of criminal defense work and civil litigation. And he's just an outstanding person. He's an outstanding lawyer, and we wanted to bring him to you. And that's why we've titled this show, Meet Ryan Ray. Ryan, glad to have you.
Glad to be here, Kent. It's certainly my pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. I got to say right off the bat first, I don't know how in the world you keep Wohlgemuth in line. He's a real handful.
Can be a daily challenge sometimes.
Indeed. Well, tell us how, from your heavy Arkansas background, did you get to Oklahoma?
Well, the firm I'm actually with now, Norman Wohlgemuth, came over to the University of Arkansas, an on-campus interviewing program, and I came to work here in the summer in a clerkship program, typically about 6 weeks. So I spent 6 weeks over here after the second year of law school, and I really liked what the firm did here. They did a very wide variety of things, which is a great interest to me. And I really liked the lawyers that were here, and they offered me the chance to come over, and I've been with the firm ever since the Monday after I graduated from law school.
Well, you certainly made a good selection, and we're glad you made that selection. Tell us about the practice of law now since 2008. You've got about 6 years in the practice. How do you find it? Is it what you have hoped for?
In a lot of ways, it's been everything I'd hoped for and more. As you mentioned, I do a litigation practice. I do probably about 50-50 of my time between civil litigation and between criminal litigation. And I like that variety. I like to work on a lot of different matters and different challenges and different ways that I can help people through their problems and figure out creative ways to handle those issues and in courtrooms and other legal forums in which clients have issues. But I have very much enjoyed the experiences that I've had. I've had many experiences I never could have imagined in law school, but
some better than others.
Some
probably.
Certainly better than others. Some more unique than others. But all in all, it's been something I've enjoyed very much and look forward to doing for many years to come, hopefully.
Let me throw you a little bit of a curveball. You've been out. You're recent enough to have a clear memory of the law school experience, and yet you're far enough to have a good feel for what the actual practice is like. There's a movement afoot because of the dwindling law school enrollment around the country, and that is primarily attributed to cost. There's a movement afoot to say, we ought to have 2 years of law school, not 3, or we ought to have 2 years plus a year of internship, if you will, before you graduate. Do you have any sense, you have an opinion about whether or not law school tenure ought to change?
Well, I do think, Kent, that it ought to be more focused toward the kind of things that you do in the practice of law. And I actually felt very fortunate. I think the program at the University of Arkansas, even some years ago, was a lot more geared to that. And I personally tried to trend myself in that way. I did a lot of extracurricular activities that were geared towards things that I thought would help in the type of practice that I, by then, was beginning to think I wanted to do. And I did a trial team where we did a mock trial and traveled, and I also did a moot court appellate argument team. And I think those were tremendously invaluable experiences. But I certainly think that at law schools, that they ought to focus more on the kinds of things that lawyers do in a day-to-day basis than perhaps taking some kind of seminar course on law in the European Union and the theories behind that.
Yeah.
Because it's something that somebody coming out in the state of Oklahoma to go set up a practice in Shawnee is not going to encounter that kind of issue.
That's
really
not going to be high on their agenda. Well, I know of at least one law school in this state that requires, as a condition of graduation, that a student successfully complete a clinical program. By clinical program, we kind of mean hands-on, do-it-yourself, working with a professor, but having a lot to do in the actual practice of law. Do you think expansion of clinical programs is a good idea?
I absolutely do. There was a great clinical program at the University of Arkansas. I actually did not participate. I was busy doing other things, but that program was actually one of the first of its kind. It was founded by Hillary Clinton, of all people, back in the early 1980s.
Really?
Indeed, and it's a great program there that you can do many different types of litigation, from civil, family, criminal, bankruptcy. You can also do transactional work, and I had many many friends that participated in it, and I think it was a great experience for them because they were going into doing things that someone in the practice of law would do, and I think it's an invaluable experience, and it's certainly something that I think should at least be offered at every law school.
Well, as a teaser, if you will, give our audience a very simple definition of a habeas corpus proceeding.
So a habeas corpus proceeding, Kent, would be where someone has been convicted of a crime in either state or federal court, and they are coming in what's called a collateral attack. So their criminal trial's over and their direct appeal is over, and they're coming to a court, often from state court to federal court, and telling the federal court that the way the state court handled my case violated my federal constitutional rights in some way that should result in me having a new trial.
I learned, well, I don't know that I learned because I don't remember it now. I've heard about the definition of habeas corpus. I mean, bring me the body or show me the body or bring the client to court, or its literal Latin translation is something to that effect.
It is indeed. So bring the body of the prisoner before me to see if he's being incarcerated consistent with the United States Constitution.
Now, you've been involved recently. We're only going to get to touch the top of this now, and then we'll take a break and come back and get more deeply into it. You've been involved recently, relatively recently, in a habeas corpus proceeding in federal court, have you not?
Yes, I have.
How did that involvement come about?
I am a member, Kent, of a panel of lawyers assembled by the federal court under the Criminal Justice Act. It's a federal statute, and so federal persons in federal court that are there either charged with a crime or related in some way to the criminal process who cannot afford their own counsel, Congress has established this act, and the federal court here in Tulsa has implemented this panel of lawyers to represent those defendants in their proceedings. And I was actually appointed in that case by the federal district judge, Judge Kern, under the auspices of the Criminal Justice Act.
Well, I want to pick up on that when we come back. We're going to break now. We are visiting with Ryan Ray, a lawyer with the Norman Wohlgemuth firm, a bright, up-and-coming rising star, if you will, in the legal community, and not only in Tulsa, but in the state of Oklahoma. And you're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
We're back on The Verdict with Ryan Ray, a lawyer in Tulsa, a rising star in Tulsa, if not the state entirely. We're visiting with him about some of his activities as a new lawyer in Tulsa and what he's experienced and what impressions he's gain from this work. Let's talk about the case we were talking about just when we went to the break, the Hewitt versus Parker case. Tell our viewers what that was about. And just kind of tell them the story.
So Mr. Hewitt was tried in state court in Rogers County in Claremore, and he had a little bit of a checkered past, and so there were some enhancements to his potential sentence as a result of that. But the actual crime of which he was convicted, it had some sexual allegations to it, but there was no touching, there was no exposing or anything like that involved. It was just some comments that I think everyone would probably agree, if he did in fact make them, they were offensive in nature. But he actually received a sentence of 125 years in prison for those as a result of that conduct, which he was convicted. And
now, that was a jury trial.
It was a jury trial.
In state court in Rogers
County. State court
County.
in Rogers County.
And so a jury came in and recommended 125 years.
That's correct.
And the state court district judge imposed that.
Indeed, that's the case.
And he got to his cell and thought, this is a little much.
He did, and he filed.
I may not make 125 years.
Indeed, and Mr. Hewitt actually filed his habeas petition in federal court representing himself. And he drafted that from his prison cell in the law library, and he raised a number of issues that he contended were violations of his constitutional rights. But Judge Kern, the federal district judge handling the case, found that he had a claim about the right to testify that warranted an evidentiary hearing.
So he didn't testify in his own defense at the trial?
He did not, even though his lawyer had based his opening statement on the planned testimony of Mr. Hewitt. And then when it came time for the defense to call witnesses, the lawyer said the defense has no witnesses. Mr. Hewitt says he was telling his lawyer and actually having a dispute with his lawyer in the courtroom that, no, I want to get up and take the stand and tell my side of the story, as I'd said before. The lawyer contended that he had changed his mind.
I see.
And Mr. Hewitt's, it's pretty rare, and we actually had witnesses that were sitting in the gallery that came into federal court in the evidentiary hearing and said, yes, we heard Mr. Hewitt telling his lawyer that I want to testify. And the interesting thing was no record was made. In a lot of court proceedings, the defendant has the right to testify, and when that is not exercised, a lot of courts will, out of the jury's presence, make sure on the record that waiver is clear, and that actually did not happen.
And that's a knowing waiver, not an accident.
Knowing waiver and not an accident, and that didn't happen, and I think that's one of the things that troubled Judge Kern.
So you had to get in and do the factual exploration to find witnesses, find what law was applicable, and then you had a hearing?
We did. We had an evidentiary hearing in front of Judge Kern that lasted about a full day. And
federal court?
Federal court.
Right.
Mr. Hewitt testified at that hearing, and as did his trial lawyer and several people, some family members and some that were not family, that were in the audience as to their recollections of that day's events.
I'm not even sure it's a relevant question, but do you recall his testimony? Was his testimony that he didn't do it?
His testimony was that he did have some interaction with this young man on the evening in question, and that they had somewhat of a dispute, but that he did not. He said, I didn't say exactly what he said I said.
Yeah.
And
so after you got that evidence put on, was there what did the state do?
Well, the state actually tried to call the trial lawyer to say, hey, this is not, that he had changed his mind.
The lawyer that defended him at the trial
correct.
Originally, yeah.
And they also focused on these kind of claims, Kent. You have to always prove that you've been harmed in some way, even if there is an error. And so I think the state also tried to say that there was other evidence such that this really didn't harm Mr. Hewitt.
If he had been allowed to testify, the result would have been the same.
Correct.
Yeah. Is that a defense, by the way?
You do have to prove prejudice, and that your testimony might have made a difference in the outcome.
Now, at the time of this hearing, how much longer after the hearing was Judge Kern's decision rendered?
It actually came a little more than a year after.
Wow.
After the hearing.
And he was incarcerated all this time?
He was incarcerated at that time.
So what did Judge Kern decide?
He decided that there was a denial of Mr. Hewitt's right to testify, that he had made that demand, and that therefore he was entitled to a new trial because there's a federal constitutional right to testify in your own defense if you wish to.
So he didn't make a finding that the defendant was innocent of the charges. He made the finding that he hadn't been afforded due process.
Correct, and it would be very rare for in even a habeas case for that kind of finding to be made. It typically is just, has there been a violation of some right, typically in the Bill of Rights, that a criminal defendant is afforded.
Well, just kind of in capsule form, then we want to jump to something else. So you won that, and then what happened?
And then I actually, Mr. Hewitt's family retained me to represent him in the new trial proceedings in Rogers County, and we negotiated a plea deal whereby he was released from prison.
On parole or something?
On a, what's called a suspended sentence.
I see.
Under Oklahoma law. It's form of probation.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to you a little bit and your practice and your experiences. You divide your time between civil and criminal matters. If you just had to pick your favorite, I just made you do it, which would you rather do on a daily basis?
You know, I think I find the criminal cases a little more interesting, Kent. I mean, you're in court a lot more in a criminal case, as I'm sure you know, and the civil side of things, it's trended much more towards, written work, and which I think is unfortunate. But in the criminal side of things, you have preliminary hearings, you have more motion hearings, you're down in court more, and also there are these constitutional issues in protecting a defendant's constitutional rights that are present in every case. Yeah. Whereas you just really may not have that type of issue in a civil case where you're plowing through boxes of documents looking for the magic key there.
Some litigation is more tedious than others.
Indeed.
Well, looking down the road, Ryan, you've got enough experience under your belt to have an opinion or to have a view, but you're not so far as to have your view be impossible to achieve. 15, 20 years from now, where do you see Ryan Ray?
I really hope I'm doing a lot of the same kind of things I'm doing today. I hope obviously to have a growing role, of course, and in the cases that I'm involved in, but I really do like the work that I do, and I hope that I continue to keep doing similar kinds of things and to tackling new challenges. I always like to come across that new issue or even new kind of case that I may never have been involved in before, and just hope that I have the same litigation-based practice, because that's really the interest that I have.
Well, you're in a great place to pursue that, working with Joel Wohlgemuth and the others in that firm, because they just have a wonderful reputation, and you certainly enhance that for them as well. We've got to call it quits for right now because we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming. We have been visiting with Ryan Ray, the young lawyer at the Norman Wohlgemuth firm. Well, he's on the margin between young and medium-aged lawyer in the firm. A real rising star in Tulsa, and we're pleased he'd give us the time. You're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
The human body, an amazing machine. What we're capable of is astonishing. If we look to what makes us human, we find that life is more than a heartbeat, and hope is more than an idea. That knowledge moves us forward, and our community keeps us together. OU Medicine is at its heart, keeping Oklahoma alive and well.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
We are a very conservative family, and we believe in old-fashioned family values. We have a loving home there, and we love kids, and we have 5, 6 of our own. And but I had no idea we were going to go into adoption, but it's been very gratifying.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We are closing up this show. We appreciate so much Ryan Ray's appearance with us and his giving us his time. He's a very talented young man who's going to continue to do great things in the legal community and in the Tulsa community in general as well. Mick Cornett and I want to thank the folks here at Tulsa who hosted us for these 3 shows and given us all of their hospitality. We really do appreciate all they've done for us and just give you our thanks. There are a couple of websites I want to make you aware of. If you want to be in touch with Ryan Ray, his website is nwcjlaw.com. And of course, our website is theverdict.tv. Please get on our website and let us know what kind of a show or what kind of a guest you'd like to have us present to you, and we'll do our very best to do so. Now, next week, we'll be back in our studio in Oklahoma City, and Mick will be back with us. We hope you'll be back with us. So once again, for Mick Cornett and all the folks here at Cox, we're saying goodbye for today. We'll see you next week.